Today's a great day. We're in Basel, Switzerland with Leonard, founder and CEO of Ernst Benz. And today's a great day as he's showing us some unique pieces. Tell us a little bit how you got into the watch industry before we get into the watches.
Well, I was actually born in St. Petersburg, Russia, and my father is one of the most talented watchmakers of his generation, and I grew up doing high-end watch restoration with him. We moved from Russia to Italy to the States. That was the way that I grew up in the watch industry. It's the service and the restoration of working for top brands taught us the experience of the way that watches are built.
And how do you assume the helm of Ernst Benz? Tell us a little about the history of how that came across.
Growing up doing restoration of these complicated chronographs, I was very passionate about moon phase complications, and I developed the Chrono Lunar, the third model for Ernst Benz. That was in 2003, and then following this, we worked on about a dozen models together, and in 2005, they asked me to take the helm of the company.
You're very young for the position that you're in. How do you think that influences your work in an industry, that's 2, 3, 4 generations, competing with some brands that have been around since 1875?
Well, we have this very historical perspective from our history and from growing up working for these old brands, but we also have our very contemporary view to this. So for us, it's our chance to mix tradition with our modern view of watchmaking.
John Varvatos, tell us a little about that partnership, and I'd love to take a look at the John Varvatos watches.
I had met John, and John was very excited about Ernst Benz and the watches that we were making, and then he felt that our aesthetic matched his aesthetic with the look of the vintage. He had borrowed watches for us to show in Fashion Week and had such a good response that he started to carry the collection in Soho. Within 3 months, we were the only watch brand in the store. Before us, he had worked with IWC and Bell & Ross, but we had done so well that John had said to me that he wanted to bring our companies closer together and develop a limited edition. It was very humbling, and the response has been tremendous. The result of it is the watch that blends his vintage aesthetics with ours. We released the first version in 2010, and now we have done 4 versions. So there's the vintage black, the vintage anthracite, vintage white, and military green, with this idea of patina and the way that vintage watches look. And it's completely different, although the DNA is very similar to Ernst Benz, but it's completely been restructured.
And what are the price points of these pieces?
$6,800 United States.
Oh, everyone's the same price?
They're the same price, just based on the strap, but even the straps are treated separately. This is African crocodile to look more like our alligator, but the distressed vintage look like John does, or the bison. And one of the main features, the dial, that we were able to develop this technique for making the dial look like patina and vintage illumination.
Perfect.
The hands that came from an old gauge that inspired John, the square pushers from the classic 40s chronographs, the angled bezel. So really the only thing that this shares with standard Ernst Benz is the movement and the crystal.
What makes the brand unique in your opinion?
Well, as an independent company, we're able to look at things in our own personal way. For us, luxury isn't money. It's attention to detail, service, and experience, and the ability as an independent company to work very closely with our customers and with their customers, personalizing watches and being able to make Ernst Benz uniquely theirs. What we've developed new is in the last couple of years we started working very heavily with HVCC DLC, which is a special technique to coat steel to make black and then more difficult to scratch than sapphire. Originally developed by the Russian military to coat helicopter blades. It gave us the chance to really redo the collection blacked out, but in a different type of way where the black will last, both in the matte finish and in the shiny black.
What's the price point of the shiny blacks?
Well, it's the movement and then the complication, but this range is approximately between $4,000 to $8,000.
Very well
and allowed us to do a lot of special treatments, color sealant on the sides of the straps to match for the different coloration, and really give it our modern interpretation of vintage, which is really what Ernst Benz is. Modern vintage.
So almost your partnership with John Varvatos is collaborating 2 brands that are in 2 separate areas, fashion and watchmaking, and putting them together almost.
But fashion and watchmaking have always been intertwined. The great brands have always been very close to fashion, and we feel that the watch really is men's fashion. It's this idea of the wristwatch and the way that it's evolved over time, and our watches are very much inspired by the gray era of wristwatches.
You know what's unique about your brand is a lot of the fashion houses come up with their own watch brand. What's interesting is John Varvatos is like, we make clothes, you make watches, and we're not here to do the John Varvatos watches, we want to do the Ernst Benz watches. Tell us a little about that.
Well, specifically what it was is that John felt that many of the designers who produce watches people who buy their clothes don't buy their watch. And he wanted to know that the people who buy his clothes will buy his watch. That's why he wanted to partner together to do something of great quality.
What inspired you to want to produce limited edition timepieces and sets at 25?
Well, the idea of the 25 for us is very important. I took the helm on March 25th, and this idea of 25 and the 250 has stayed with us. We've now started to do a smaller limited editions, numbered in 25, numbered on the dial. As we start to
Where's the number?
right here on the dial, right below the model
Oh wow,
number.
that's
It's up.
cool.
Well, because what I realize is that men who's buying our limited editions,
I didn't notice that. Yeah.
as important it is to them what number they have, later, if you ask them, they have to take the watch off and look at it to see the number.
I've never seen it on the front. That's really cool, actually.
We wanted to be able to put it on the front because if we're only doing 25, the man who gets number 7, it's clear to see that he has the 7th in the world. And this allows us to do some special colorations and unique ideas that might not be appropriate for the regular core and something more special. This is Chrono Combat. Military case, military green dial, and a more rugged approach to Ernst Benz in a series of 25 limited editions in both 47 and 44 in our signature chronograph, the scope, and our base automatic. Later this year we'll be introducing another limited edition of 25.
So tell us a little about what's next in the vision for the brand, so our readers can be a little bit educated about where the brand's going and we could watch the future of the brand.
Well, in the last 8 years, from the time that I assumed the helm, we went from producing approximately 200-300 watches a year to nearly 4,000 watches a year.
Within 8 years?
Within 8 years. And really, the idea was how the watchmaker can build a better watch. But now, it's really this idea of the spirit of travel and the art of watchmaking. And for me, Ernst Benz is our ability to be able to tell this story, the history of watches, the history of travel, and we have a lot of ideas that we want to share.
And it's at Basel. Tell us the watch you're wearing right now.
I wear the prototype of the watch that I made with John Varvatos, which is my baby. This is the actual original prototype.
And when was this produced?
I've been wearing it for 3 years.
So this is like your lucky watch?
This is my lucky watch, and it always has the time in New York. And although I change my watch on my right hand, depending what we're developing, since I took the helm of Ernst Benz, I've only worn 3 watches on my left hand. The first moon watch I built with Mr. Benz, and the watch that we introduced, which is why I'm here, the diving watch, which is our finish of the original prototype, and then the watch that I made with John. But I also have this.
A double watch.
This is DLC, and this is actually a slate dial that isn't even in the collection. So this is actually a new prototype that we're showing here
Oh wow,
too.
I like the black.
It's black, but the dial has this gray color that turns to gray, that turns to blue, and it's part of this treatment that we do with these metallic dials, like the body of the old airplanes. They're not painted, they're brushed metal.
Well, congratulations. Thank you for allowing us to be your first meeting on the first day. But you have 9 days ahead of yourself, so I look forward to getting a summary from you at the end of the show to see how well things went and so forth. So thanks for your time.
Thank you very much, and congratulations on Haute Time.
Thank you very much.